I'm your host, Ashley Marie, and we are abroad today, traveling on the road, a little bit like they do in the sports industry, which kind of ties in great with our guest that we have with us today, Dr. Jack Groppel with us. He is a world-renowned sports scientist and performance expert. He's worked with many people from baseball to tennis, but he's also going to be telling us a little bit more than just the basic athlete stories. He's got a really cool book that has come out, and it's going to be focusing on the emotional side of an athlete. So we're going to bring to the stage today Dr. Jack and have him explain to us how he got into the industry.
It's so great to be with you, Ashley. Thank you.
You have a very diverse background, and I'd say a high performer. You are a master of many different things. So tell me a little bit of how you got started. I know it's going to be a little complicated, but how you got started in the industry and what led that progression.
Thank you. I think if you start with the end in mind, I mean, when I got into sports science, it was really embryonic. It had just gotten really started in the US. It had been being used in the former Soviet Union and the former Eastern Bloc countries, and sometimes like illegally, like with drugs and things like that. So that's the end in mind. Now let's come back to the start. As a child, I grew up in a very small town in Southern Illinois. Almost all my family were farmers. On paper, I should have been a farmer. And my father had 21 beagles, Ashley Moran. And it's just crazy that Dad had 21 beagles and he ran them in what was called field trials, and which means there's no hunting, but they let a rabbit go and then they time how long does it take the beagle to herd the rabbit back to the hunter. And it's all, they're called field trials, time trials. Dad, his kennel was named Shady Dale Kennel, and he had a dog that was a national champion. And he named the dog after President Eisenhower's nickname, which was Ike. So the dog's name was Shady Dale Ike. And your listeners can look him up because Ike was really one of the top dogs in that era. When I'm younger, Dad decided to take a different job and he moved to a larger community, had to sell all the dogs. So the first entrepreneurial story of my life is we drive to Niagara Falls and I watch a man give my dad $900 in the late 50s for Ike. Now that's the equivalent of about $11,000 or $12,000 in today's money. So I'm going, whoa, this is interesting. Now, but understand that my father was a very hard charger and a very tough man. Definitely believe spare the rod, spoil the child. And after one particular beating that I received, and I explain all this in the book, instead of cowering, I said, I'm going to show you how good I am. I'm going to prove to you. And that was the beginning. I became an Eagle Scout at 13. I mean, but what I was trying to do was a young man just trying to find love from his dad. So I taught myself to play tennis, actually. I taught myself. I had one introductory lesson, and then I walk on and I play for the University of Illinois. So I had no tennis, and yet I play in the Big Ten.
It's amazing.
And then I got my undergraduate degree in wildlife biology because I didn't have a scholarship offer. And Dad said, because we're all farmers, I'm going to study agriculture. Couldn't get a job then. So I start grad school in population genetics. I'm thinking I'm going to study migratory habits of wildlife. But no, what do? I have to go to a lab and change the flour in test tubes so these little beetle called flower beetle can procreate more rapidly. So here I am at 22 years of age, creating a romantic environment for beetles to have sex and procreate and get all these different generations. I'm crying myself to sleep. 22. So, I mean, if your listeners ever think, well, it's all about, you got to get in there, you got to know early what you're going to do. Not a chance. My sister talked me into going to talk to the people in physical education. They admitted me. And I mean, it's just crazy that I fell in love with the field. My master's thesis advisor, who was my kinesics professor, said 17 words to me. And Illinois has written about this, that he said, if you apply yourself, you could become a pioneering leader in the science of tennis performance.
Wow.
And I just took it. I did it. So one thing after another, then I go to Florida State and get my PhD. But when I finished my coursework, my advisor from Illinois called me and the tennis coaching job at Illinois opened up. Now I become the youngest NCAA tennis coach in the country. No experience, but yet that door opened. I'm going to burst through it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, I think you talked about it. I was a connector. I just kept connecting the dots all the time. do quality work, connect the dots, do quality work, connect the dots. And I just started speaking. I started writing articles. And one thing led to another. Then I only worked with the men's tennis team for 4 years because I started working with players on the tour. From a science perspective, I'm taking high-speed films of some of the greatest names in the world. Then I started working with the White Sox. Everything's by accident. And then I go to San Francisco and work with John McEnroe on behalf of Nike. And one thing after another. And then I get tenure. I get tenure at a Big Ten university at Illinois, but then I quit. I decided to become the tennis coach. And I get a great tennis coaching job, but I gave up tenure, which is a lifelong commitment. And then I became the founding chairman of the Sports Science Committee for the U.S. Tennis Association. And then it just kept snowballing because I kept doing quality work. And when a door opened, not only did I walk through it, I burst through it, even if I had no training. See, I never had a tennis class. I never had a tennis lesson, yet I'm in 3 tennis coaches halls of fame. I never had a speech class, yet I've traveled to 52 countries and spoken in front of live audiences as many as 60,000. I've spoken to millions. I never had a business class, yet I started a business with my own money with one colleague, and we sold it to Johnson & Johnson, a Fortune 50 company. So if anyone ever needs hope, my book is about hope, but my book is also about at what cost, because I struggled personally in my life. I was this uber achiever, but there were marriages, plural. I'm not proud of that, but I tell the whole story. My son is adopted from China, and anybody that's watching, your listeners, I'll explain what I'm looking at. I just opened up a picture. When my son was 12 years old and I have artificial knees, we summited Mount Kilimanjaro. And it was on Kilimanjaro that I said, if I write this story, my life story, I've got to tell everything. So it's all the really cool stuff I did, but at what cost? So it's everything. The relationship with my dad, finding my faith, adopting my son, going to China by myself to adopt my son. So it's this roller coaster of life that I've been on. And I decided I wanted to tell the whole story to really help people. Because if any of your listeners have ever felt they had to please someone or ever felt they weren't good enough, that's who I wrote the book for.
That's amazing. You have done so much and experienced so much. And because of that, you're able to connect with people. And I know this message is going to speak really high to a lot of our audience, especially about you. There's no linear way to get into anything. And a lot of it does come down to who you know, who you connect with. And that side, you don't have to necessarily have the formal education. So I think that's a really cool way of connecting and putting that message out there for both sides. What does it cost to? There's always a cost to every single thing that's out there.
Right.
And you've helped shape how athletes think about performance, recovery, excellence. And
Right.
your book, it shows about that high achieving, the win and all that stuff for athletes who are identifying and building their performance, right? What's the danger of chasing this greatness in what kind of costs are there going to be to their peace, relationships, themselves? What are some words there?
Yeah, I think whenever you work with a world-class performer, whether it's in athlete, entertainment, or business, whatever it is, if it's a world-class performer, you always want to ask yourself the question, what matters most? And there's no judgment, by the way, on that question, on that answer, on your answer to that question. If you want to make money, that's okay. Just understand that at what cost are you doing this? Exactly. If you want to have a great career like I did, like I actually have a line in my book, I wouldn't have married me. I mean,
oh no.
I'm just speaking facts. These are facts. I mean, I have that line in my book because I was this uber achiever. And why did I get married? Because we're supposed to. Cultural thing.
Yep.
But I wouldn't have married me. I have that line in the book. You know, no energy.
Yeah, when you're chasing a certain level of performance, you have to cut out other things. You're human, right? You can't do everything. So there's some things that are going to fall by the wayside. And at that point, you need to figure out and do a reassess. Are we comfortable with those things falling by the wayside? Do we need to comfortably let those things go to get to these other mile markers at the time? So yeah, there is no judgment around that kind of a thing. It's part of life.
100%. Yeah. And I mean, and I think that's just the key to understand who you are and what matters most. And by the way, a lot of people say, well, when should I do it and how often? Every day.
Yeah.
In fact, if you've got a child, for example, and they've got a game and you've got a telephone call that got set up, ask yourself what matters most right now.
Yeah.
Very often, it's not that telephone call. Very
Exactly.
often, you can reschedule that telephone call.
Yep.
And I think, like, I have people that I start working with, and they put it in their calendar like twice a day as a recurring appointment. What matters most right now?
That's a great idea.
Just so they start calibrating their life. What matters most right now?
I'm actually going to add that to my calendar.
Good. Let me know how it works.
Right. I'll do that
it'll work well.
Yeah, I think so too. I'll do that for the part 2 of the podcast that we're planning for the follow-up.
I'll look forward to that. I really will. Then you have to report back for your listeners.
Oh yeah, for sure. I will definitely.
How's it working? Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Where is she now? How is this all working for her?
I like it.
So when you were climbing Mount Kilimanjaro with your son, because it was more than just a physical challenge, it was kind of a turning point for how you understood love, purpose, and fulfillment. For athletes and high performers listening, what is the biggest lesson that mountain taught you about real strength and what it looks like?
Well, it was, I think, the greatest lesson. You got to understand, when you're on a mountain of extreme altitude, you never know how you're going to respond. I mean, some of the greatest performers in the world have not made it to the top of Kilimanjaro because they didn't respond to altitude well. They were very well trained and very fit. But so I think it's how you face the unknowns in your life. One of the things that I coach athletes and people when I work with performers in any arena, whatever it is, control the controllables in your life. The uncontrollables, you really can't do anything about that. So don't focus on those. You might plan that, what if this happens? What if this happens? Like for my son, he was only 12 when we summited, and I had to have a backup plan. What if something happens to me and we're in Tanzania? I had to have a total plan of what if. But I was out of my control. If something happened to me, out of my control, I can't focus on it. I just plan in the case of it. But what are the controllables? I'll never forget this. On the second day, we hadn't seen the peak yet. We hadn't seen the summit. And the clouds cleared and we saw it. And it was like, are you kidding me? It was so far away and so high. We were at 12,000 feet. You've got to understand, it's over 7,000 vertical feet higher still. So you're exhausted, you can hardly breathe, and you're going, there's no way. And I think this happens to us in life. We think about this mountain. That's why the book is called Mountains Within. We see this mountain, you're just going, wait, I got to get there? And it seems impossible, but you can take the next step, and you can take the next step, and you can keep taking steps. And if you do quality work and you keep taking quality steps, you might just find yourself at the summit of that mountain one day. And we did. And that was what my son did. We said, we're not going to focus on that summit. We're going to focus on the next step. And my nickname on the mountain was Babu, which means grandpa. Are you kidding me? I have trained so hard and they're calling me grandpa, and I'm with my son. But to my son's point, and this is another lesson for your listeners, and I cover all this in the book. Every night after dinner, he could have gone back to the tent and read, played games. He played cards with everybody. And the next oldest person was 25 or 26. He was way younger, 12 years old, but he played cards. Nobody knew that he and I played cards all the time when he was little, so nobody could beat him. So his nickname became the Big Dog. On summit night, you leave base camp, which is 12,500 feet. 13,500, sorry. And you're going to climb all night. You're going to hike all night to 19,341. So you're going to go 4,000 vertical feet at extreme altitude. It's awful. You're hallucinating. The wind is whipping across the mountain. It's 0 degrees. The hoses on our hydration packs froze. And it's daylight and it's the next morning, and my son was struggling. And we saw climbers around us being ushered down the mountain. They're sick. They're throwing up. They've got altitude sickness. And it scared me. And I looked at my son, and his name is Shen. And I said, Shen, are you okay? And he couldn't even answer me. And I got firm. I said, buddy, you got to answer me. Are you okay? And his head was down, and all he did was, are you okay? And he just shook his head up and down. He couldn't talk. And the guide that was with us heard me get firm with him and comes back and says, Shen, do you want to go back? And I'm going, we're done. We're done. He just gave the opening. And my son, bless his heart, 12 years old, do you want to go back? Head down, shakes his head, no. But he can't talk. And then all of a sudden, this is the lesson. All the climbers who he'd been playing cards with every night, all of our colleagues, they were on the rim about 200, 300 yards above us. They started cheering and screaming for my son.
Wow.
I started weeping.
Yeah, I would too.
And I go, buddy, what do you want to do? And he said, and I walked over close to him. He held his hand up. He says, Dad, I got this. And he started taking steps, and he made it to the summit of Kilimanjaro. But I believe it was that love. And I think that's a great lesson, that if you give love like he was doing, playing cards, being with people, that love comes back. And it was that love that he was shown that got him to the summit of the mountain.
Well, that's amazing, because you're right. It's so much about love. I think so many people are like, oh, you got to be tough. You got to have a God, especially in sports. You know, it's a tough game. But a lot of it does come down to you can only go so far unless you have a love for the sport, unless you have a love for what you are working on. And that goes to people too. It's very important to have a relationship that is based off of real, positive, not toxic love that is going to propel you forward and keep moving. Like, that is what grows things. That is a huge growing force. So I think that that's really incredible. And I'm glad you brought that up.
And this is another thing I talk about in the book. We're not intended to do life alone.
No, it's true.
We're not intended to do life alone. So those of us that are high performers, though, we feel like we're alone sometimes.
Yes.
But yet it's that love that propels us to the summit of all these mountains within us.
Yeah.
To overcome. And that's why I decided to write the book. And it was on Kilimanjaro that I decided to tell the whole story, not just the really cool stuff.
Yes. Tell us about the story behind that, because that was the next question.
Well, I was on the mountain, and what happened was, it was the third day, and all of a sudden it just hit me like a brick that here we are. I've got artificial knees, and you're on this scree. It's like gravel. And so with every step with artificial knees, you slip. And then there's shale. There's sheets of shale. And you slip on, and this shale rock slips. And I'm just going, this just sucks. Honestly, I was just dying.
Yeah.
And then it hit me that everything I was feeling was just like my life. It was exhilarating, yet terrifying. It was exciting, yet anxiety. And at one point, we're on this 900-foot straight up wall that you've got to scramble on. And there's a point on the wall. And your listeners could look this up. It's called Kissing Rock. And the reason it's called Kissing Rock is that you have to put your left foot on a little ledge and then swing around and get around it. And your face is so close that it looks like you're kissing the rock. Well, on the day that we were on that wall, the Bronco Wall is what it's called, and we get to Kissing Rock, it had been raining and it was foggy and it was muddy. And my guide says, put your hand on this outcropping, your left hand, put your left foot on the ledge. And I'm going, I don't see a ledge. He goes, it's there. It's under the mud. And it's 150 feet straight down. And he said, put your foot on the ledge and swing around. I'll catch you. I'm going, you better freaking catch me.
Yeah.
You know, but again, I just felt that everything I was experiencing on the mountain was exactly like my life.
Yeah.
And that was where I decided I had to write the whole story. The difficulty with my dad, that I may not feel good enough, or I had to please him. And then the struggles I had in relationships, and then how I hit rock bottom by being in the hospital for a long time. And then the growth that took place from that, because I decided who I did not want to be. And then I started that growth, and then going to China by myself to adopt my son. So I decided I'm telling the whole story.
That's incredible.
But it's all bookended on Kilimanjaro. The introduction and the ending are all on Kilimanjaro.
That's amazing. I'm so glad that you used that time to a life-changing moment, and you shared that with the world, which is really impressive and something that people can learn from, and they're going to be able to grow from years now. So that's appreciate you doing that. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I want to wrap it up for the day, unfortunately, but are there any last words of wisdom that I always have that question? Any last words of wisdom that you like to share with the audience?
I think it's just lessons from the mountain. If you look at the big result, just put it up on there, just put it up on the wall like the mountain. But what is the next step you have to take? If you're going to climb the mountain, who are going to be your porters and your guides? Who are going to be your mentors? Who's going to climb this mountain with you as you try to get if you summit this mountain within you or these mountains within you? It's all about the mountain, one step at a time, and make sure it's quality work, one step at a time. And whether it's personal or professional, you might just make it to the top of your own mountain.
Wow, that is so amazing. I love that. We're going to end on that note. Guys, there's nothing else that needs to be said. Thank you so much, Doctor. Appreciate you. That was just amazing. Go grab his book, everybody, at jackgroppel.net, Mountains Within. Please reach out. Guys,
Thank you.